Welcome everyone once more with Coach Kanji, Coach Inayat Kanji from Ample Therapy. With public demand, we are back once more with Coach Kanji. Welcome. Um, we are doing this series of talks between Mindly with the simple approach and with Ample Therapy with the Ample approach. And today we are going to talk about the A of Ample. And let me just put for a second here the ample model. If I put here, you can see the A stands for artistic, and I will then move back. Let me read it out. Artistic, mental, physical, life, educational. Ample. I seriously love it, Coach Kanji.
Thank you.
So let's go here. Over to you. Tell us a bit more, Inat.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Why would I create this acronym AMPLE? And why would
Mm-hmm.
A be the starting factor? It's so interesting for me, at least, because it's my journey, right? And there's synchronicity in karma and the cyclical fashion of your own journey in life.
Mm-hmm.
I think of it like a race, sometimes like a race track, which I'm running around because art was my first unconscious cognitive behavioral therapy, if you like, CBT.
Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I did it so unconsciously because I was 16 at the time, 15. And what it
Mm-hmm.
was essentially is that my parents were quite, immigrant family, right? So they wanted us to be very, very uh, high achieving, right?
Okay.
So they really pushed us with education, really pushed us even with sport to some degree, though education came first. Which is another side issue, which we'll
Mm-hmm.
discuss on another one when we get to P.
Yeah.
But in essence, a friend of mine saw I was getting in a lot of trouble at
Mm-hmm.
school. I was rebelling a lot. As we've
Mm-hmm.
talked about on previous podcasts, we've both had an experience with abuse, specifically of the sexual nature. And mine came from somebody who was a priest, in effect. I come from a Muslim background. They were an imam and a sheikh, an Arabic teacher, everything that connotes trust, essentially. And
Someone
when
you
that was
trusted.
broken, yeah, yeah. So, and when that was broken, and I could go into the story, but the nuance of it is really interesting. How predators behave.
Mm.
And but as an adult, when or even as a teenager, you start processing it. For me, I just yeah, I wasn't ready yet, so I compartmentalized a lot in my teenage years. And in fleeting moments, I would get memories and thoughts, and I just was running off anger a lot, Jeev, as we've talked about before, off camera, off air as well. So why I'm saying the A is because a friend of mine,
Mm-hmm.
maybe for his own selfish notions, I don't know. Hip hop was a huge thing at the time, right?
Right.
I'm an 80s baby, early 80s baby. So, I grew up in the good era of hip hop. And within that, I was quite, as you know, again, a martial artist. So I was getting a lot of fights as well. Indian boy, majority English community, small black and Jamaican community. Indians were picked on a lot, seen as timid and studious. And just
Mm-hmm.
again, maybe it's just the adversity of trauma. I just didn't stand for it. My power had already been taken. And so, why I'm saying this long version of what is the A, my
Right.
friend saw an opportunity where it's like your character, your persona really suits hip hop. Do you think you can rap? Now imagine me just coming up to you, Jeev, and go, "Do you reckon you can rap, mate? Should we try it?" Like, right? In that moment, I was like, ugh, I
You
don't know.
took the challenge.
Bro, I was so self-conscious though. Like in music
Okay.
lessons, I was the kid who would
Mm-hmm.
refuse to do anything
Mm-hmm.
because firstly we had the connotation of music's not good. It's not, in certain religious circles they think you can lose yourself. You can almost get
Mm-hmm.
intoxicated by the music, and you should only be
Mm-hmm.
intoxicated by God. So there
Mm-hmm.
was those elements, but then at the same time it's very self-conscious to have to perform, right?
Right.
The
Yeah.
process of performance is quite a self-conscious one, right? Unless we learn the art and the skills. So remember, you know me now, I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like this. The only thing I could do performance-wise was speeches because
Okay.
I knew that I was good at English. So I had a confidence about speaking. And because, again, my family had given me that ability and pushing me in my local community and my religious, opportunities to do so. But expression, which is what art is, it's just the means of expression, right? The art of expressing oneself. And that's why I've gone around the houses to tell the story. I didn't know how to express myself other than through my
Mm.
fists, shouting, right?
Mm.
Throwing stuff, running out of a classroom. So for a friend of mine who was a prefect, so a prefect being somebody who's
Mhm.
very much given responsibility by teachers, admired, he was an amazing singer. And we used to spend like all our breaks and lunchtime periods in the music studios at school. They'd made a new music studio, and teachers would be
Brilliant.
baffled, like, what's Inayat doing in here? Like, but it was in that process that I found the art of expressing oneself, and more importantly, letting go of thoughts and emotions.
I have
So
so many
now
thoughts.
I know I can see you writing down. The last thing I'm going to say, because otherwise I'm just going to keep talking, is that it took a long while, though, Jeev, to understand why I
Mm.
needed A in AMP, because I
Hmm.
did that from a hobby standpoint, from a just a distraction standpoint, belonging, just a group of mates. I just loved music. Music wasn't allowed in my house. It was my secret forbidden fruit. There was so
Right.
many things within it, emotionally. It gave me
Mm.
kudos because I was a bit of a known figure in the area. So now he's not just the guy who beats people up. He's a rapper. He's got some talent. There's so much of this caricature that I was creating within it. But at the same
Hmm.
time, cathartically and unknowingly, there was also therapy going on every time I wrote. I remember
Right.
doing like jobs, like I was a receptionist at Central Middlesex Hospital before it closed down. When it was quiet times, I just pull out A4 out of the printing. I'm just writing, 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 writing. Anywhere I went, on a bus, on a train, anywhere where I'm alone with my thoughts, I'll be writing,
Right.
writing, writing, writing. And why I'm continuing, and then I'm going to let you jump in, is because when I basically, my family and other things, was told, don't pursue this music, you can't pursue this music, it's not a viable career, it's not a religious condoned activity, all of these things. And then I got married to somebody in my community. I stopped, just like dead of a hat, stopped. And this was after getting a
Mm.
record deal as well, because my partner was
Wow.
also Muslim. So both of us were having these quandaries, like, you got to get to 9 to 5, mate, you got to go to university, you can't be doing this,
Mm.
right? And I didn't know how much I was going to lose in that process. But I stopped writing, and then mental health started kicking in.
So this is where I connected to the mind over here because there's some of the things that I wrote down while you explained all this is the concept of feeling safe. And of course, our parents, with the best of intention, I mean, they think they are doing it right according to their situation, and they might be definitely doing it. They have the best of their interest. But at the same time, as we grow, we try to find safety, we try to find that trust, and we keep on looking around ourselves. Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's art, and expression starts giving us some version of control, some version of purpose, and some version of being valued, being recognized when something else is being said. And I'm not saying whatever was said was right or wrong, that's a completely different discussion. But where I'm coming to is you felt safe with yourself while expressing art. Am I right?
100%, 100%. It's really interesting because I didn't even know these thoughts were within me.
Hmm.
Often it's only when people respond to your thoughts, you know, um, because again, maybe it's the way the world is constructed that, we don't know ourselves first. We learn others before we know ourselves. We're
We
very
keep looking
outward.
outside. We keep looking
Exactly,
outside. Yeah.
exactly, right. And it's probably got worse in the modern era. But
Hmm.
within that, as you mentioned, yeah, I just didn't realize how much value it had for me as a human, because I was doing it so unconsciously or subconsciously, however you want to frame it. It's, to me, it wasn't even a hobby necessarily. Maybe it started as a hobby, but it became an
Hmm.
obsession. Like it just, and like I said, I didn't necessarily, like other kids might dream when they get good at it.
Hmm.
I want to sell out arenas. I want to do this. In the back of my mind, I always knew don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to do this. I don't know if I fit. We go to open mics and be the only Asian people there, right? Like
Right,
things like
yeah.
that. But then at the same time, as you say, when you perform to an audience, we used to do like school tours and college tours and university tours. To have 100,000, whatever it was, in the venue, and a lot of the time we'd be doing improv, all sorts of these skills,
Yeah.
which really, from a like you say, a value standpoint. If you felt like you've been criticized a lot your lifetime, even like I said, despite the fact that we're supposed to be very high achieving, sometimes when you have very high achieving expectations,
Hmm.
you can also have a very critical voice because it's often the parent's voice or
Because
something like
nothing is
that.
enough, right? You even if you have achieved 9 out of 10, it's not enough.
I found out
And
the
that
other
very,
day I
hmm,
got 6 A's in my GCSEs, and the others I didn't get A's in. I asked my parents, "How many A's did you get?" Found out they didn't get as many as me, but I still got a real telling off for not getting 10 A's, right? So it's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
So I had a very large critical voice. And
Hmm.
within that, as I say, it's just, yeah, you never think you're good enough. But the validation and the applause and the appraisal I got through that experience, through that artistic experience, almost saved me to some degree, I would argue. Because remember,
Amazing.
my journey ended up
Hmm.
being a heroin addict. Most people don't
Hmm.
make it out of that.
Hmm.
And it's still an ongoing battle because sometimes I
Hmm.
feel I yearn for my pleasure center to be fulfilled, maybe
Hmm.
overly,
Hmm.
maybe because I feel like I wasn't allowed to be enough of a kid.
Hmm.
That's why I avoided the nine to
You
five.
missed that.
Um,
Hmm.
exactly. So look, we can fast forward to obviously I've been an actor, TV presenter, radio, and all that. But these were for me the building blocks. These were the seeds. This is what planted it. Then becoming a teacher, drama teacher. I really started and then therapy, like we say. I was really wanting to understand from a playful standpoint more than anything. What is this art of expression? Whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's poetry, story writing, script writing, autobiographical, whatever it may be, the art of expression fascinates me.
In fact, we do have a full episode coming on reparenting because we are actually being our own parents and taking care of the inner child, with the being the inner cheerleader, taking care of the critical voice. But I would not divert and come back to one important concept in expression. When you express something that you love,
Mhm.
it's at the borderline of being in control or being in charge and letting go.
Hmm.
And that borderline, I have spoken with people who are speedboat racers, Formula One drivers, people who have done 200 million presentation in front of investors, people who have presented in front of 500,000 people, or even two people, or even a mom who is just about to become a mom, just before the childbirth and so forth. And there is that edge where there is a balance between love and being in charge, because you are your own self. When I say being in charge, that means you are not being dictated by XYZ, you're not being dictated by things that you don't agree with, and so forth. You are yourself. That's what I mean by being in charge.
Hmm.
And letting go is feeling free, but not letting go in the sense that you lose it all. You are
Mhm.
still in charge. So it's the speedboat example. I'm using a real example from someone, and he mentions that he is in control, but he's going at such a high speed, and he's feeling so good about it. And it's the same feeling that comes from painters, that comes from people who are composing music on a piano, that comes from people who are doing brush strokes on a canvas. And I feel you cannot do brush strokes if you're being controlled by someone else,
Mhm.
but you cannot do brush strokes if you totally let it go. And that
Mhm.
balance is where you feel safe. And because you feel safe,
Mm.
the mind is in the best state of mental health, and that is what is already healing your inner state. What do you
It was
think?
funny because as you're talking, I was thinking, why is martial arts called martial arts?
Arts. Exactly.
Why
Arts.
isn't it called something combat related? Like
Mm.
again, because it is physical expression. It's an
Expression. Yeah.
artistic expression, and that's why people call it the sweet science of fighting and boxing or anything other. But it's
Mm.
interesting because as you were speaking, I was thinking again. Many people talk about this having some activity where you're living in such a way that is very borderline. You're
Mm-hmm.
getting such an adrenaline rush because it's beyond the comfort zone. It's beyond the mundane. It is something that is really, almost a survival kind of state, but
Mm-hmm.
in a way, like you say, but controlled, not forced upon
Mm-hmm.
you. You're
Mm-hmm.
choosing voluntarily to take yourself to the brink, but
Mm-hmm.
in a controlled manner, and
Yeah.
express yourself in that sense. And many people have just, people who do, freehand rock climbing, like in
Mm-hmm.
these type of really dangerous, kind of sports or activities. They've expressed this, the idea that this is where I'm really living, where I feel really alive. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's interesting as a concept. I'm not suggesting to everyone to necessarily,
To start
start
rock
doing
climbing.
parkour, right? Yeah. But the point is, because it's a skill thing, obviously, it's a skill base. I'm not going to, again, similarly, it's like fighting. I enjoy sparring, but I'm not going to tell somebody else, go spar every week. You'll have black eyes every week, right? You have to build your
Mm.
understanding. But in the context of art and therapy, what I recognized is before one can understand the roots of themselves, sometimes people aren't ready to go and deep sea dive into their understanding of themselves and why their construction is the way it is, why their wiring is the
Mm.
way it is. Art can be an excellent avenue into it. It can also be an excellent coping mechanism once you discover the issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
as we mentioned, and there's a question now which I want to pose to you, is
Mm-hmm.
in our journeys, it's helped me massively, as I said, subconsciously and consciously when I then later realized it in life. And actually it was a bit of a struggle to pick up the pen again without having a purpose of making music, because sometimes I was just picking up a pen now to write. Whereas before
Right.
we always used to make music off the back of it. So that's why I say it's a bit unconscious in the
Yeah.
therapeutics because my outcome was what I was focusing on, not really realizing what it was doing for me internally. Um, but so my question then is to you is because you've written a book, bro.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite an interesting read. I haven't managed to finish it, but it does tell me a lot again in terms of two people who have been through somewhat what one might argue, you know, um, I don't like to call it because everything is a life lesson, and sometimes if you judge people by the first yard or the first mile, it's a bit misleading. But maybe
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have a head start. Maybe
Yeah. Mm.
maybe we started behind the front line. I don't know how you want, as an analogy, how you wish to put it.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
but the point being is, as a young person who then, as an adult, has to understand all this trauma that has occurred, and trauma is obviously relative. In writing your book, what motivated you to do it, and what did you find that you gained once you completed it?
So there were many reasons that came to motivate me. One of the most important reasons was I'm not alone, and there are so many other people waiting to express that thing. And writing this actually helped me express. It was like talking to myself,
Mm,
expressing. And as a child, as I grew, and you mentioned about anger episodes, and I used to feel frustrated, but I did not know why. And now I know why once we reflect back and think about it. But having gone through your most trusted caregivers abusing you have actually does something to a child's situation, mainly because at that point, a child has not developed the logic, the arguments, or the necessary thinking that, you know what, I have a choice and I'll walk away. The child thinks if I comply, if I just be there, even if there is abuse, this is my primary caregiver, and I will feel safe because the child is just trying to feel safe. So they go towards. I went towards being a people pleaser. My way of being people pleaser was to make jokes, was to express in front of. I remember even in year two, I believe, I would be 7 year old if I remember. There was a play happening, and I said I want to participate in the play, and I also want to have my name at the end of the play. I really love the fact that they put a lot of names at the end of the play.
Mhm.
I became an engineer because someone forced me to, but if I get another chance, I would probably go into performing arts or singing or expressing or teaching them. In fact, this is what I do in the second stage. So when the book idea started coming, the first thing I was mentioning is, can I express this? And if you see one of the chapters in the book, I have given an acronym there, how to detect child abuse,
Mhm.
how to see any physical symptoms if a child is specifically drawing something, if a
Mhm.
child is specifically breaking something, if a child is behaving in a different way, like you mentioned about rebelling, when somebody is forcing you to do something, there are certain things that we as so-called grown-ups
Yeah.
can actually detect that I think something is not okay with this child. And I did not have that. For me, if I perform better, if I was
Mm.
always first in class, I have got 100 out of 100 many times and still told of her, oh, why did you not get that in another subject? And I was like, oh gosh. And so that needed to be expressed in the book. So the book has many purpose, but expression, like you said, is a key thing. It made me feel safe. It took me 35 years to first talk about this topic with my parent, because by that time I had lost one parent already. So that discussion I could not do. I had my own regrets. And then the discussion was very awkward. It all started because I lost one parent and I had anxiety because of that. And for a long time, people said, "You're fine." Then I I spoke with someone. I grieved, and then that gave me the courage to speak about my childhood. And here is another interesting thing which I have not expressed publicly as much.
I like firsts, bro. I like firsts. Go on,
I
please
n-
express.
I never had a birthday celebration for myself, but I was the one who always remembered everyone else's birthdays and was the first one to go and celebrate their birthdays. And when I
Wow.
spoke with my counselor, and she was like, "Oh my!" And the proper ones when I started celebrating my birthday
Mm.
is when I met someone in life and we had a relation and we started celebrating things because I never kept myself as the first one. I always tried to celebrate the birthday of this other person. So these things needed to be expressed in there. But yeah, expression in a safe manner. When you sing, you can sing when somebody is forcing you to,
Mhm.
but you can sing like a bird. The bird
Mhm.
is not really thinking, you know what, if I don't sing, then someone will kill me. No, the bird is singing because it's nature to sing. That's what they are made for. There is nature outside and they sing. And so if you want to express something, you just express that. That makes it you with you feeling safe.
Mhm.
Does that
That's so
help?
true. That's so true, Jeep. Because it is. I mean, when we observe even just generally human beings, if they're whistling or singing to themselves, immediately we already know that. Oh, you're really happy today. Why is that? Because there's something about sound. Sonics.
Yeah.
We are just but frequencies and vibration and energy and atoms and particles, right? And we come together for this physical form based on sight. You can go into the science of it, right? But
Can I
ultimately,
share one nice thing that I thought about the mouth? It's literally between the head and the heart.
look at that. Look at that. Look
Our
at that.
voice, our voice is coming, and this bit is literally between
The head
here
and the
and
heart.
here.
That's phenomenal. Bro,
Think
that is
about it.
phenomenal. You got to make a t-shirt or something, like, you know what I mean? Write that down because it's so true. It's so true. The idea of like everything for me now like has meaning and purpose. So even that observation tells me a lot because it's the balancing act between the head and the heart, right? Feelings create thoughts. So at what point do I understand them? At what point do people understand me? Is when I can express it, when I can communicate it, when I can find the balance of the two. And so yeah, so like you say, it's a journey where some might not find a reason to pursue art, and that's, I suppose, why we're talking here today, because it is to reaffirm or to affirm to those people that it's massively important to have some creative and artistic outlet. And that's another thing. When we talk about what is creativity, you know,
Mm,
create, I find, it's different to be instructed. It's different to, you know, it's just, if you think of childbirth, if you think
mm-hmm,
of God,
mm-hmm,
creationism is the closest thing you'll get to it.
mm-hmm.
That feeling, you know, and not a narcissistic power, but rather a fulfilling power, a fulfilling validation that, you know, one has that ability to invent, you know.
Yep.
You might be able to analyze it better than me, but I just know the power in it, in that there's
No,
something
no,
about
I think
creation.
we are feeling it here. That's what actually is connecting the energy. And here it's the same thing. The same kind of neurons are affected when you're trying to create a word, create a line, create a drawing, or create a sandwich, or create a company. Everything starts from inside, and you have to get into that flow in order to reach there. Um, I have a question coming, but I'll share something else just before that. Is everyone has a different definition of art, and like our
Mhm.
parents were saying, this is right and that is not right. Not everything is black and white. There is such a big spectrum that is available, and I have seen, and we do some computing classes in schools, the so-called techie person who has never expressed themselves, and they are going to teach another child how to code, and they get into their flow.
Mhm.
They become creative at that moment. They get ideas from nowhere. They come and tell me, I didn't know I could do that, but when I saw that I have to teach someone, if it felt as if it is going to come. And so art is not about drawing, art is not just about singing, art is going to that safe zone of flow
You said
to
it again. You
express.
said it again. Flow state. You just answered my own question. Because look, I'm a hypnotherapist. You know that already, and you studied the
Mhm.
same sciences in that the beta mind is the critical mind, right? And that doesn't awaken until we're like 8, 9, 10 years old, right? Depending on the individual. Some of us get hypervigilant due to trauma. Maybe it starts a bit earlier. But the point being is 0 to 7, 0 to 2, you're in delta, and then 2 to 7 is just theta. Play, imagination, creativity, suggestibility, right?
Yeah,
So that inner child never leaves us. It's a state of being. It's a part of your brain. It's the way your mind has different functions. I mean, I was learning from a lecturer the other day that 90% of our brain might be subconscious. Only 10% is critical mass, right? So
it's like the
imagine that
screen of
Wi-Fi.
the computer. You know, the
Yeah.
conscious is like the screen of the computer. Everything else is happening inside. Only we see that little bit, right? The external.
And that's why I always use this analogy of like, imagine like it's like having your Wi-Fi on constantly, just downloading, and then we choose, okay, now, what do I want to look at software wise? What do I want to look at like in terms of processing wise, like, right? But there's a bank of data there that we've even
Yeah.
forgotten about, totally forgotten about, right? And that's because, as I say, in those early formative years, we are purely living in that state. And that's why you see children, if they're allowed to play, why are they so blissful? We all talk about, oh, high school was the best, school days were the best, childhood was the best. Why? Because at that time, you get to be in flow state almost
All of the
continuously.
time. Yeah.
And then
Constantly.
when, as an adult, you can achieve it, whew, because that critical mind, as much as calculating an outcome and processes and achievement and all these things are needed, systems, sometimes I find it quite antithetical to what the human creationism is. Sometimes I find that, it's just one tool to my box, but
Mm.
yet we've put so much emphasis on it. And if we're looking at the modern era, and, I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist in some way. It's just two people in a room making a theory between themselves. But ultimately, you know, we're moving to an age where computers and AI and systems
Hmm.
are so advanced that they're able to supersede us to some degree. And in that process, I'm finding that many people have lost their connection with their
Yeah.
artistic self, with the creative side, with that theta state, that state of flow.
Yes.
We achieve it in the gym, we achieve it in so many different scenarios in our life, but it's only when we allow our critical mass to sleep.
The analytical side of it that keeps on criticizing or questioning. You know, the analytical mind actually has a good purpose. It was to keep us safe because if we did not have the analytical mind, then we are eaten up by the tiger in the long, long past.
Indeed, indeed, indeed.
But and for example, if I'm not able to sleep in the night, it's mainly because in the past, the human was supposed to, if there is a tiger nearby, you better stay awake rather than fall asleep and get eaten. So those were the initial purposes of it. But if we forget that we have to go back to our natural state of flow and go back to that theta state, whether it is in a sleep state or a creative state, then we keep on staying in a constant state of fear or being unsafe. And that our brain thinks it's doing it to save us so that it keeps us safe, but it's actually taking away the real energy that we have to create something. And that was the question that I was coming to, that what are the ways what people can use art in their lives before even they realize, because I feel that you don't need always to go through huge amount of crisis like you and me have done, and other people have done, to realize these things, because these lessons can still be learned. What happens is people go through this crisis because it makes their brain focus on that, and unless they go through the crisis, the brain is constantly doing something else, thinking it doesn't matter. But instead of doing that, if we do small things like breathing, organizing something, if that's your thing, not everybody wants to organize. What we have to find is find a list of small things in a daily life which takes us to that small level of microflow. And if we can do microflow, then in the big picture, it becomes a flow state. Which is why when we say, if somebody is feeling disturbed and then they go and drive a vehicle, they actually drive better, mainly because they don't want to do a mistake. They know that they want to calm down. The white noise around them calms down anyway. The vibrations around them calms down. And it has been found, like, first of all, the person was not feeling well. So logically, they should not be allowed to drive. But when they
Mm.
drive, they're actually calming down and doing things right, which means they're going to some version of less thoughts, a flow state. When people are cooking, or you can see that all of a sudden somebody starts tidying up, not
Well, look,
because
I
it's
think
their hobby, it's because
you
they are
gave.
going to some state.
Well, this is what you said something there which was really interesting. That's why I started interjecting and overlapping with you, because if I just thought in that moment, right? Like computers, TVs, anything, right?
Hmm.
If we look at our brain like that kind of having similar functionality, like a computer, who leaves their computers on 24/7? Who
Yeah,
leaves their operational devices on 24/7? Most people don't, right? At some point, you switch it off. Back in the day, they would burn out, they'd overheat, all right? I'm sure we've got around these things now. But the point being is something's always, you're either paying too much money for your bill because you're having
Mm-hmm.
to constantly power it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever way you want to look at the analogy or the metaphor, is interesting because in the same way, like we need sleep, we need rest, we need to quieten the critical mind. And achieving
Really
flow
so.
state is a beautiful way of doing it, right?
Mm.
Whilst being awake. It is a sleep of the nervous system to some degree.
True.
Because people know alpha, if people understand hypnotherapy, alpha is like the um the end result of theta, in the sense of
Mm-hmm.
that theta is that real flow state. Sorry, not at the end result, the entry point of theta, because
Okay.
it's a really heightened state of relaxation, but you're still quite cognitive and functional. It's often when we do things in autopilot, we'll be in that alpha state, right?
Yeah. It's like
Um,
a dream state where you know that you're dreaming kind of situation.
yeah, some people call it vivid dreams, like
Mm.
dreaming while awake. Like the idea that before I go into that heightened state of flow state where nothing else, we can learn more and more to get into these alpha states, right? Recognize that I just need some downtime. I just need some downtime. And then from there, one, in seeing the benefit for themselves, like you said, going for a walk, going for a drive. We don't have to think, I need to turn left, I need to turn right sometimes. You're in a state of autopilot, you're in a state of alpha, a very heightened state of relaxation, entering into hypnosis, entering into theta. But like you mentioned, flow state, whether I'm in the gym and I'm just performing moves and punching a bag and I'm just thinking about my fight sequence and just being playful, or
So
whether I'm
reducing your thoughts into one, maybe from many
one
thoughts to
focus.
few thoughts to one thought.
Exactly. One focal point, and I don't
Mm.
think about the next thought. I don't try to construct it. It just happens. Just let the energy flow through me, right? Because we have a bank of
So,
knowledge.
so here my question is, how do you help in the art side of Ample,
Mm-mm.
and how can other people learn from you on the A of Ample? Could you share some light on that, please?
Yeah, sure. So this is what I'm saying. In that, I use the martial arts thing a lot because for me, it's very cathartic. It has different elements to it. There's physical aggression that gets exerted. There's also the endorphins of powering your body through movement and muscular activity, and then there's also the playful side. But if you put that aside, because we can't always just do exercise, all right?
Hmm.
Sometimes I need some downtime, and I still want a flow state. And why would
Hmm.
I want a flow state? And why would I encourage my clients or anyone other? Because as we've described, the world is highly functional, highly operatic, and human beings are becoming like that. And some people do it quite innately. They go for a walk in the park, they sit with nature. These things are still artistic, right?
Hmm.
But if you can do something expressive rather than
Hmm.
passive, like we talked about at the beginning, you start to also therapeutically and cathartically let go of much of that energy building within you, whether it's resent emotion, resentments, whether it's giving forgiveness for yourself or others, whether it's letting go of critical thoughts and critical mass. I encourage people, whatever your medium, some people write diaries. Like I say, some people really like poetry. There's something within it, again, because you're focusing on something that is not analytical but expressive, but you're still using artistic communication through rhyme or through structure, right? Then
Hmm.
there's other things like painting, as you mentioned. My father, after retiring, found out he was an amazing painter, and since a child he always wanted to be an artist, but he became an accountant because of life, right? Survival, right? All these different things. I've seen it too many times, again and again and again. The beauty it gives to a human being in understanding themselves, processing their day, processing life itself, just getting through life in a way that they enjoy rather than survive. It has such a beautiful punctuation to your life
Brilliant.
whenever you
How
need
do
it.
you how do you encourage someone who comes to you? you know or you think that they have some art, some talent, whether it is martial arts, whether it is
Could be
expressive
dance. I love
in
dance, for
design.
instance, right? Dance, the
Yes,
physical
so but
expression.
they
Sometimes
say,
that's the most flow state you can achieve, right? But yeah, sorry, go on, continue.
but they are convinced that they can't dance or they can't do this, and they don't believe in themselves. And this is a big part of mental health, that you help them
Mhm.
believe that they can still do it. There is something in that. How do you approach this, and how do you what do you suggest for people who want to develop this with or without help?
So this is where I try to understand the client first and their nature, their background, their their upbringing, because within it, like you say, language often will indicate to us if we can go backwards. Language will indicate the thought, which then indicate the feeling. Then hopefully within
Right.
that, I can also get some understanding of the full context. And
Hmm.
I don't believe any individual, because everyone was a child, everyone has creativity within them. But as you mentioned, we think there's some yardstick for right or wrong, even in expression. My
Hmm.
dad is an example I give a lot because, as I say, he found art late. He started going to classes, and he kept saying to me, "But I want it to be exactly like the portrait or exactly like the landscape, like which I'm copying, as if there is a right and a wrong, and a teacher's
Hmm.
going to assess him and give him a mark." And I was like, "What happened to just doing it for the enjoyment of
Hmm.
expressing yourself through a visual medium that's an extension of your arm?" And you can go into it, like there's
Hmm.
movement involved. It's not a static thing. You're not just sitting and meditating. There's something active that you're doing to express yourself. But for
Right.
many, as you just mentioned, they think there's a right and wrong. So even if you're just throwing paint at a sheet of paper, that might be the way you want to express yourself in that moment. Modern art is a
I
great
have an
form of
example of
therapy,
that.
right? For those who are a bit snobby with art, 'cause, yeah, modern art, it's, people argue all the time, what is this? Because
Yeah.
it goes beyond. Once I learned this from, artists, because I'm more of a performance artist, but I learned this from others who are really astute at art. Once you learn the tool bank of like skills wise, how to do art, it's boring now because that's just like studying. There has
It
to be a
becomes
point
very
where I get to
normal.
express myself, even if it's a stencil drawing like a kid that then goes in the Tate Modern. Like it's art because it's expression. So
Correct.
within
Yeah.
that, whether it's dance, whether it's sometimes a conversation can be a form of art if one
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
truly not calculating what they wish to do. It's the art of being, not doing.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
to be, and just to let the extension of your energy create something that is to do, if you like, right? But not calculative thinking, what am I going to do right now? As soon as you start doing that, you're not being artistic. You've moved back into the critical mass. If I can just say to you, if I play some music and just say move, just move however you want to move. It's irrelevant, right? I'm not here to
Just
teach you
follow
body
it.
popping
Yeah.
and breakdancing, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
move. So in that way, it's almost an
Mm.
empowering thing of self-belief and feeling good enough, as the title of my professor always tell you, the book I Am Enough. Because by Marissa Peer. Like, it's really interesting for me that these statements have rung true to me now, because I recognize how many of us are so critical upon ourselves in different ways and forms. So what I try to do for my client is firstly remove all that critical thinking and
Yeah.
allow them to return to their childlike state, where whatever it is, whether it's physical exercise, whether it's artistic expression through the voice, singing, whether it's writing, whether it's painting, whether it's dance, whatever it may be, you have to have a mode or a medium to access for yourself. Forget everyone else, just for yourself,
For yourself.
to
That's the key thing, for
punctuate and
yourself.
break
Yeah.
down your
Yeah.
day, to
Yeah.
have all states of being and all states of play, so that we don't
Mm.
feel saturated in a way that we have been forced to just run on the treadmill and then exhaust ourselves till we.
Here I have one comment from one of our discussions in the past, and I have
Mm,
one completely different kind of example of art, and a true example, because I was really surprised. Is that art? And it is.
mm,
So the thing that the first one was, someone asked, "How do you know what you're doing is right or wrong?" And the answer that keeps on coming is both in the short term and in the long term, you feel happy with yourself. If you feel only happy in the short term, that might be some kind of a coping mechanism, could be addiction, could be dependency, or could be your true thing anyway. And if you are just waiting to be happy in the long term but not happy in the short term, that still is not helping. But if you're doing whether it is cooking or dancing or swimming or music or whatever, you're happy in the short term, you're happy in the long term, then you're kind of aligning with that flow state again. And the example that I had in mind, there was this competition. In fact, this person actually has a TED talk on this. There was this competition in Germany in a university to create a startup, and this group of girls, they decided they will take a lot of tape, a colored tape, especially insulation tape that they use. They stick it on the wall to make art out of it.
Mm.
That's all they did. And initially, they failed miserably in the competition. The people did not like it, investors did not like it, and so forth. And initially, they thought they are not doing it right, but they were feeling good about the art, and they carried on doing it until someday someone from a very large automotive company saw their art, and he said, "Why don't you? We have a car on display in the shopping mall. Okay, the wall is blank. Could you go and decorate it? There's an art behind it." And while she was doing it, a group of senior citizens came
Mm.
and said, can we join you? We just want to put tape on walls. And they really loved it. To the extent, now in many senior citizen homes, they actually run workshops. They take installation tapes, different colors, blue, yellow, red. They give it to people. They have blank walls and they start decorating. And that's art for them. That takes it to their state of safety and flow. Imagine that being art, and it is art.
Of course it is. Of course it is. You know, because I was just thinking just now, I played football last night. When I play football, some people are very artistic.
Mm-hmm,
You know, you have a ball, there's a field,
mm-hmm,
there's 11 people, or whatever it is. And in this case, we're playing seven sides, so there's 14 people, right?
mm-hmm.
And there's one small objective to get the ball in the other goal, right? And people
Yeah,
express themselves. You know, some people are quite structural, quite strategic. How do I win this game, right? And you have to pass this way, and we have to position ourselves this way. Other people, they talk about it. You know, why Lionel Messi? He's so artistic. He just expresses himself. He understands the parameters. He understands the lay of the land. He understands the way the world works in footballing senses. But he expresses himself on a pitch. So,
exactly.
like you say, you know, you know, some might find it controversial because they want a box art. Like it's again,
Mm-hmm.
it's an academia. It's a subject. It's something you do, right? Of course, it is. You know, it's a verb. It is something that we do, but it's also a noun, and it's also everything other. It's just a
Yeah.
means of communicating, expressing oneself. You know, so how to box art, I don't actually know. You know, like we said, we have performance art, we
I
have
don't think
visual
we
art.
should box art. It's everywhere. The expression, the word expression
I'm
is one
sure
of
you're
the
going to find
key
there's going to be
takeaways.
artistic people within computing. You know, they
Definitely.
find a way to express themselves through. You
In
know,
fact, the slogan of WordPress is coding is poetry. Um,
it's just being in a state, isn't it, Jeev? And I know
exactly.
we're reaching the end of our time, so it's just being in a state whereby one can allow themselves to just create from an internal place rather
Hmm.
than being driven by this front lobe of mass here, which is, as I say, often very analytical and critical and calculative and everything other. And it's not to say that that's not, as we said earlier, it's a massive benefit to us. It's what keeps us
Benefit
alive and
humans.
surviving in a world of dangers, right? But
Yeah.
when you're in a safe space, and we have to balance our life, we shouldn't always be in hypervigilance, right? When you can find time, and this is what I mean about the therapeutic side, give yourself time, a safe space where you can just be with yourself and express however you enjoy. I just find that I have lots of mediums, hence the ample.
The word enjoy is the happy spice, isn't it? I'm going to ask all our audience to write down in the comments and express as well what makes them happy, what takes them to that state, and it will be really good to see uh, how people go to that state. We have some examples, you have some examples as well, but it would be really good to get some more engagement from everybody who
Definitely.
is listening and watching. And my next question is, what are we
Mhm.
talking next week? Where are we going to the M of Ample? Do you want to go to the P of Ample? What's your
Listen,
thought?
I was just going to say, I think we've had a couple of talks together where we've had questions posed at us, but we haven't had a chance to answer them. So
Hmm.
I'm happy to do either. We can talk about the M, obviously the mental. All of these are therapies: artistic, mental, physical, life-based therapy, or educational, and they all just center around different experiences I've had in my career, but also holistically in my life. Right. So I'm happy either way. We can either use it as an opportunity to answer some questions, or we can jump into the next part of the acronym, and yeah, further understand why would there be a necessity for ample modalities in one's life if one is to experience a full life.
Personally, I whenever I hear the word ample, I feel empowered because
No.
it feels I'm enough. Ample. Ample is it relates to being enough. It relates to being having things that you need. It's ample, and that's a very powerful acronym. In many of our workshops, we use acronyms so that we can combine big concepts into something simple, right?
I've got
So,
a very good friend who's quite a successful producer and artist, rapper and singer in the music industry. And he
mhm.
always tells me, he's like, word don. We're word dons, we enjoy word play. So I'm really happy, G, that it hit home because I thought, like, I'm a genius. Look, this is one of my creative moments. I was like, I'm a genius. Ample. It works so well. And when I created it, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been a teacher, I've been this, I've been that. But yeah, so I appreciate you, sir. And I'm glad because at the end of the day, I do it for others, right? As much as it was for myself in that moment, at the same
Exactly.
time, like we talked about it earlier, it's a means of communicating, expressing oneself, and also gaining communication back from another, right? Feeling like you belong, right? So to know that people can understand, why would I even suggest that we need ample therapy, we need ample modalities? Why the word ample, and everything other? I gave a lot of thought to it, so I appreciate you, sir.
Sincere thanks. I mean, seriously, can't believe time has flown and we are nearly at the 1 hour thing. But that simply means that we can come back answering questions as well as answering the rest of the things to make people talk more, share more, and know that we are not alone, whether it is mental health, physical health, or any kind of health. And the more we talk, it becomes a diminishing and shared problem rather than something to be worried about and build it up inside. Sincere thanks for explaining the artistic side of Ample, and I hope we can create a lot of little micro flow states from this. So thank you so much, Inayat.
Thank you, Jeev. Much appreciated for your time as always, sir.